Its entertainment world is on fire.
I've never heard about men getting pregnant. I've never heard about this argument. It must be some part of what you call the far left that is so minuscule that I, who am...
No, Jane.
What?
It's not minuscule, and I'm sorry, you can't throw this back on us. I assume it's because you are locked into media that just never wants anyone in their audience to know anything sketchy about the blue.
And it all started with a single sentence that left Jane Fonda frozen mid-smile. On the latest episode of Club Random, Bill Maher, the man famous for mixing charm with unfiltered chaos, dropped what fans are calling a truth grenade right in the middle of Hollywood's safe zone. The conversation began calmly. Two industry legends sipping...
Was it about a garage door?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. That is...
No, you know this about California. Come
No,
on.
I don't.
Well,
I'm sorry, I don't.
You've never heard that California is overtaxed and overregulated? That we are a one-party state where there's sort of no checks on that sort of extreme leftism. And what do you think?
I don't for a minute consider California a state that is extreme leftist. Not at all, not any way.
Drinks under the studio lights. But within minutes, it spiraled into a verbal showdown that had cameras trembling and producers glancing nervously off screen. Viewers couldn't believe what they were seeing. The queen of activism, Jane Fonda herself, suddenly on the defensive as Maher dismantled every polished talking point she brought to the table. Social media exploded. Clips flooded timelines. Hashtags like Maher destroyed Fonda and Hollywood meltdown shot to the top of trending charts. Insiders whisper that even the crew backstage stopped breathing as the tension climbed, realizing they were witnessing a moment that could split Hollywood in two. One side cheering...
They became the birthers, they became the Tea Party. There's about a third of this country that's very hard right. Of course they love Trump. When he left office, he had an approval rating of 34%. So he really only had those people. Why is he now tied? Because the other part of the coalition are people who, they don't really like him that much. They just think the far left has gone so nutty on so many issues.
That's what they're being told.
That's what
By people like you.
Because it's true. You think the far left does nothing crazy?
Maher's raw honesty, the other accusing him of going too far. And somewhere in the middle sat Fonda, stunned, eyes flashing with disbelief. This wasn't just an interview. It was a televised earthquake. And the aftershocks are still shaking every red carpet in town. The studio lights were dim but charged. That strange electric quiet that comes before something explosive. The cameras rolled, and what was meant to be a casual, lighthearted exchange between two Hollywood icons began with the politeness of an award show speech. Jane Fonda smiled, relaxed, her trademark grace still intact as she leaned toward Bill.
Who is the far left? What do you mean when you say far left?
I mean, I could give you a million examples.
Yeah, well, give me one.
Okay, the NAACP.
You think the NAACP is far
Could I
left?
finish my sentence?
Yes.
You asked me for an example.
Yeah.
Travel advisory, that's like the State Department does to go to, I'm sure when you went to Vietnam, they were advising you not to. There's a war on.
I didn't talk to them. I don't have no.
I know, but you know a travel advisory.
Yeah.
Today we have them for very dangerous countries.
Yeah.
Don't go to North Korea. Don't go to Iran.
Yeah.
You know where they issued a travel advisory for black people not to go?
Yeah.
Florida. Every day there's stories like that that just makes people roll their eyes and go, are you people nuts? Even if they don't matter that much, I don't think one person listened to this and thought, I can't go to Florida. But they just suggest something to the average person, which I completely understand, which is, wow, do you people ever find it?
Bill Maher and said softly, I think people exaggerate the whole woke thing. Maher leaned back, arms folded, a faint grin playing at his lips, the kind of grin that warned he was about to draw blood without raising his voice. Really? He said, his tone almost teasing. Because from where I'm sitting, Jane, it's not exaggeration. It's infestation. The room went still. Even the stage assistant paused mid-step, sensing something sharp in the air. Maher's tone wasn't angry, but it carried a weight that made Fonda's smile falter for just a second. She laughed it off, the way people do when they realize the laughter is their only defense. "Bill," she said, "you can't seriously believe the far left runs everything." But Maher didn't blink. "You
Really think men can get pregnant? You know, that kind of stuff. And I understand that a trans woman can get pregnant. That's different than a man getting pregnant. Insist on blurring that line as if that's some sort of reasonable social cause, as opposed to just being for having full rights, respect, and protection for trans people."
You live in California," he replied. "You tell me if it's not the most overregulated, overtaxed, one-party system in the country." Fonda tried to respond, but the confidence that usually followed her like perfume seemed to fade. The audience, a mix of Hollywood insiders and podcast fans, leaned in. It was subtle, but you could feel them waiting for her to trip. "California isn't extreme," she insisted, voice tightening. "It's progressive." Maher raised an eyebrow, eyes narrowing like a cat about to pounce. "Progressive?" he repeated. "So, Jane, when you can't open a business without 6 permits, or when people are moving out by the hundreds of thousands, that's progress?" The silence stretched long enough for a camera light to flicker. The tension was now a living thing. Fonda took.
So I've never heard about men getting pregnant. I've never heard about this argument. It must be some part of what you call the far left that is so minuscule that I, who am...
No, Jane.
What?
It's not minuscule, and I'm sorry, you can't throw this back on us. I assume it's because you are locked into media that just never wants anyone in their audience.
It took a slow breath, trying to steady her rhythm. "Look," she said, "we're not perfect, but at least California tries to care about people." Maher smirked. "And yet," he replied, "you've got homelessness on every corner, businesses fleeing, and politicians who act like reality's optional." It wasn't just debate anymore. It was a slow dismantling. Every time Fonda raised a defense, Maher countered with a fact that hit harder than the last. A producer whispered something off mic, but no one dared interrupt. The cameras were catching something rare, not a scripted argument, but genuine discomfort from a Hollywood veteran who suddenly realized she wasn't in control of the room. Worse was the audience reaction. A murmur here, a chuckle there, not cruel, but enough to break her rhythm. She glanced toward the camera.
Well,
And that's...
I mean, I don't know. I read 2 papers, and maybe I don't. I should watch Fox News.
No,
I guess.
I don't watch that. That's too far. But you don't have to. I'm not...
Like she wanted to call cut. But Maher pressed on. "Jane, you're saying you've never heard about men getting pregnant?" he asked suddenly. She blinked, caught off guard. "No," she said. "I mean, that must be some fringe argument somewhere. I've never heard that in real life." Maher leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice dropping lower. "It's not fringe, Jane. It's on talk shows and universities and corporate policies. If you haven't heard it, maybe your newsfeed doesn't let you." Fonda froze, unsure whether to laugh or argue. She opened her mouth, but the words hesitated. On the monitors, you could see the crew exchanging quick glances. One of the sound techs mouthed, "Oh no," while a
That
camera...
certainly has been the history of this country, was police who were all too willing to shoot black people. So defund the police, though, was not a good idea. And you know who mostly didn't think it was a good idea was black people, because they want police in their neighborhoods, probably more than we need them in.
Camera operator silently zoomed closer. The air between them turned heavier. Maher's voice softened but carried an edge sharp enough to cut glass. "You know what's funny," he said. "You've spent your life fighting for causes, but maybe now the cause is fighting reality." That line landed like a punch. Fonda exhaled, trying to recover, and smiled with a brittle poise that fooled no one. "Bill," she said carefully, "you're being dramatic." "No," he replied almost gently. "I'm being honest." Like that, the rhythm shifted again. Maher wasn't shouting. He didn't need to. His calm tone made the words sting more. He talked about echo chambers, about how Hollywood created bubbles that told people what they wanted to hear. "People in your world," he said, "don't get news, they get
But the Republicans tried to catch the Democrats with this, and they put this on, they brought it up in Congress.
Yeah.
And all the Democrats voted against it. The Democratic politicians were not for defunding the police. It's that radical fringe that has captured a lot of the media, academia, some of these cultural institutions that are not liberal anymore by my old school liberalism. The ACLU is all about free speech. They don't really believe in it anymore. They believe, in one of their chief people who is trans said, I will die on
comfort. And comfort doesn't change anything. Fonda tried to interrupt, but Maher's voice rolled right through hers like a slow-moving wave. That's why the rest of the country is tuning out, Jane. Because while you're busy talking about perfection, they're trying to pay rent. The audience didn't clap, didn't cheer. They just sat there, drawn in, waiting for her next move. Fonda reached for her glass of water, her hand trembling slightly. The kind of tremble you only notice when the camera lingers too long. "You're twisting things," she said finally. "This isn't about comfort. It's about progress and compassion." Maher nodded, almost sympathetically. "Sure," he said. "But compassion without reality is just performance. And Hollywood loves a good performance." That broke the dam. A few in the audience laughed nervously, a ripple spreading through the room.
Top story. Most voters say U.S. can't repair severe division. And they went into the fact that 5 years ago, even during the pandemic and during the George Floyd protests, even then, people thought, well, we are going to get through this. And now they seem to be on the page of, it's not going to happen.
Bill,
What do we do? Did you see the story?
Yeah, and I think what's new about this moment, one of my teachers and friends, Doug Seidman, likes to say this, we aren't divided, we are being divided.
That's right.
By companies for profit, okay? And we have our divisions, we always have.
Fonda looked at them, something in her expression flickering. Not anger, but realization. This wasn't her crowd anymore. In the control room, a producer whispered, "We might have to cut this short." But the director shook his head. "No," he said, "let it play. This is gold." Outside, social media notifications were already pinging. Viewers were clipping, quoting, arguing in real time. Hashtags were forming mid-broadcast. Even before the episode ended, people were choosing sides. Some called Maher brave, others called him cruel. But everyone was watching. On set, Maher leaned back again, his posture relaxed, as if he'd just finished a casual conversation rather than a cultural knife fight. Fonda exhaled, a small laugh escaping her lips.
At some point, you, on your phone, you ordered a yoga mat or something. Your algorithm figured out you're a liberal. Then your neighbor looked up a truck, you're a conservative. And from that day forward, you got different information every day and nobody sent a notice. And so now you literally think your neighbor is insane because how can they possibly think this stuff? But if you put your phone next to their phone, you're in different algorithmic universes, and that is brand new and very
"Always have to make it sound so dark," she said. Maher tilted his head. "Reality's not dark, Jane. It's just unfiltered." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Or maybe you just enjoy the fight." "Maybe," he said, smiling faintly. "But at least I know I'm in one." The moment hung in the air, that invisible standoff between Hollywood idealism and hard-edged realism. The audience didn't quite know how to react. Some clapped hesitantly, others whispered. Fonda sat still for a few seconds, her expression unreadable. Then she said softly, "Maybe I should start watching Fox News." The crowd laughed, but the humor didn't land the way she hoped. Maher just smiled, his expression unreadable. "You don't have to," he said quietly. "You just have to look around." And that was the moment, the one the internet would freeze frame, replay, and dissect for days. Her eyes darted toward him, a flicker of something, confusion, pride, maybe even respect. When the camera cut, she leaned back in her chair, exhaling deeply. Maher offered a faint nod, as if acknowledging a sparring partner who'd held her ground. The applause that followed was polite but hollow, more relief than admiration. No one said it aloud, but everyone felt it. Hollywood's perfect script had just been rewritten live, and not by the person who thought she was the star. The moment the cameras stopped rolling, The air in the studio still crackled with tension. Jane Fonda stayed seated for a few seconds longer, her hand resting on the edge of the table, knuckles pale from holding her composure too tightly. Across from her, Bill Maher leaned back, casual as ever, like a man who had just finished a workout instead of a debate that might light up the entire internet. The audience began to disperse, murmuring under their breath. Some avoided eye contact with Fonda. Others whispered her name in disbelief. One crew member swore later that he heard her mutter, "They always twist it," though no one knew if she meant Maher, the media, or both. Social media was a battlefield. Clips from the exchange hit every platform, edited, slowed down, captioned with headlines like "Bill Maher ends Jane Fonda's Hollywood delusion" and "Club Random turns into Club Chaos." Fans were divided straight down the middle. One half called Maher a hero for saying what everyone's thinking, while the other accused him of humiliating a woman who had done more activism than he ever would. Twitter threads exploded, Reddit debates spun into chaos, and even celebrities started choosing sides. An actor who once worked with Fonda tweeted, "This wasn't an interview, it was an ambush," while another replied, "Finally, someone said it to her face." Meanwhile, Jane Fonda's publicist was reportedly fielding calls from every outlet in Los Angeles. Some wanted clarification, others wanted exclusives. One network allegedly offered her a primetime sit-down to clear the air. But behind the polished statements and denials, insiders claimed Fonda was furious. Not because she lost the argument, but because she felt betrayed by a fellow entertainer she thought she could spar with safely. "She thought it'd be like every other friendly talk show," one producer whispered anonymously. "She didn't expect a cross-examination. And Maher?" He didn't flinch. The next morning, he walked into the HBO studio with that same half-smile, as if the chaos outside was just background noise. When asked by a journalist if he regretted going too hard on Fonda, he simply said, "Conversation isn't combat, unless one side shows up unarmed." That quote alone sent the internet into another storm. Commentators accused him of arrogance. Others called it brilliance. Memes began flooding in. Screenshots of Fonda's stunned expression paired with captions like "When reality finally hits the Hollywood bubble." Inside Hollywood, though, things weren't so funny. Some longtime friends of Fonda quietly distanced themselves, while others tried to show support without getting dragged into the culture war. One director who had worked with both posted a long message about how media loves to pit thinkers against each other. But even that post was met with backlash. Everyone had an opinion, and no one wanted to stay neutral. In private, sources close to Fonda said she replayed the clip several times, studying her own reactions. "She couldn't believe how quickly it turned," said one confidant. "She's used to applause when she speaks, not pushback." At one point, Fonda reportedly told a friend, he wanted a viral moment, not a conversation. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. Maher hadn't raised his voice or insulted her. He just kept asking questions she couldn't neatly answer. Meanwhile, talk shows and news panels turned the exchange into a national conversation. Pundits debated whether Hollywood elites were out of touch or if Maher had gone too far in mocking their beliefs. One commentator said, "It wasn't about politics. It was about power. Who gets to define truth on television?" That struck a chord. The argument between Maher and Fonda wasn't just about California, taxes, or woke culture anymore. It had become a symbol of the growing divide between the Hollywood narrative and the ground-level reality most Americans lived in. And as the storm built, something unexpected happened. The Club Random episode broke streaming records. Millions tuned in, some for outrage, others for curiosity. Comment sections were flooded with timestamps like 2:41, when Maher drops the hammer, and 5:12, when Fonda tries to laugh it off. It wasn't just content anymore. It was cultural theater. Clips were dissected frame by frame like crime scene footage. Did Fonda's expression at 3:47 show regret or contempt? Did Maher's smirk mean he planned it all? The internet turned into a digital courtroom, and everyone wanted to be the judge. Inside Maher's team, producers debated whether to invite Fonda back for a follow-up episode. One of them, half joking, said, "It'd be ratings gold." Another replied, "If she says yes, we'll need paramedics on standby." But the truth was, Fonda wasn't answering any calls from Maher's side. Insiders said she felt blindsided, calling the segment dishonest editing, though no one could find a single cut in the final broadcast. Still, people couldn't stop watching. And with every replay, Fonda's hesitation, that split-second pause before her answer, became the centerpiece of endless analysis. Was it shock, guilt, or realization? No one knew. But it didn't matter. The narrative had already taken a life of its own. By the weekend, paparazzi caught Fonda leaving a wellness spa in Malibu, sunglasses on, head down, ignoring questions about the show. Reporters shouted over each other, "Do you regret it? Will you respond to Maher?" But she slipped into her car without a word. The headlines wrote themselves. Jane Fonda breaks silence by saying nothing. Back on his podcast, Maher addressed the chaos in his own way. "People keep asking me if I feel bad," he said with that same casual grin. "I don't feel bad for having a real conversation. I feel bad that people forgot how to have one." The audience clapped, though the sound carried more weight this time. Everyone knew the clip that started as entertainment had morphed into something bigger, a cultural flashpoint. Behind the applause and the trending hashtags, something quieter was brewing. Rumors surfaced that other Hollywood figures, actors, writers, even producers, were rethinking their public stances. One insider said, "They're scared. They saw what happened to Jane and realized if someone like her can get caught off guard, anyone can." It wasn't fear of Maher. It was fear of exposure, of being the next one confronted with questions they couldn't neatly answer. And somewhere, between that fear and fascination, Hollywood held its breath. No one knew what would happen next, whether Fonda would fight back or walk away. But one thing was certain. After that night, no celebrity conversation would ever feel safe again. The storm didn't fade. It evolved. By the next week, what started as a heated on-air exchange had transformed into a full-blown cultural event. Late-night hosts dissected it. Columnists framed it as a defining moment for Hollywood. And even morning talk shows found ways to sneak it into lighthearted segments about celebrity clashes gone too far. Clips of Jane Fonda's uneasy smile and Bill Maher's calm stare ran on endless loops, across screens, each commentator drawing their own conclusion about who really won. Some networks labeled Maher a truth-teller. Others painted him as a provocateur exploiting outrage for clicks. Either way, everyone was talking, and neither Maher nor Fonda could escape the spotlight. Inside her home in Beverly Hills, Fonda sat by a window overlooking the canyon, scrolling through the barrage of headlines. Her phone buzzed every few seconds. Calls from journalists, messages from friends, notifications from publicists urging restraint. She silenced it all. The silence in her living room was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of a television in the background replaying the same conversation she was trying to forget. Her assistant appeared at the doorway, hesitant. "They want a response statement," she said softly. Fonda sighed. "A statement about what? That I spoke my mind? Or that I didn't speak it fast enough?" She wasn't angry anymore. She sounded tired, as if the whole thing had drained more than her patience. It had scraped at her pride. While Maher was thriving on the chaos. He didn't gloat, at least not publicly, but behind closed doors. Sources close to him said he was both amused and unsettled by the reaction. "It wasn't supposed to blow up like this," he reportedly told a friend. "I just said what I always say. Maybe people are just finally listening." Still, part of him knew this wasn't just about that one conversation. It was about a wider unease simmering beneath the surface, an audience that felt ignored by Hollywood. Watching one of its icons get cornered live and realizing how fragile their heroes could be when faced with blunt truth. But the drama didn't stop there. A week after the episode aired, a leaked email made its way to the press, allegedly from one of Fonda's team members to a streaming executive. The email described Maher's questions as coordinated character attacks and suggested editing future collaborations more carefully. Within hours, Maher's team denied the accusation, calling it conspiracy nonsense. Still, the leak deepened the divide. Now it wasn't just about ideology. It was about trust. Fans began choosing sides not by politics but by loyalty. Some vowed to boycott Maher forever, while others proudly declared they'd stopped believing in Hollywood long ago. The online arguments grew personal. Strangers insulted each other in comment sections. One viral post read, "Bill didn't destroy Jane Fonda, he exposed the culture that protects her." Another countered, "She stood her ground against a bully and didn't break." Hashtags morphed from mockery to movements. Stand with Jane versus Honor Truth with Bill. News outlets reported on it like it was a new kind of Cold War. Even celebrities who hadn't been part of the conversation felt pressured to comment. A-list actors dropped vague statements about the importance of empathy. Talk show hosts made jokes that felt less like humor and more like warning shots. Everyone wanted distance, yet couldn't resist being part of the spectacle. Inside the entertainment industry, producers began whispering about an invisible shift. Guests were suddenly cautious about going on Maher's podcast. Publicists requested topic restrictions and pre-approved questions. Others privately admitted they respected him more for not bending. "He said what no one else dares to say," one executive told a journalist off the record. "Everyone's terrified of losing fans. He's fine losing friends." But for Fonda, it wasn't about losing fans or friends. It was about losing control of her own image. The woman once celebrated for her fearless activism now found herself painted as an emblem of denial. "They're turning me into a headline," she said during a private dinner, her voice trembling slightly. "Like I'm some kind of symbol, not a person." No one expected. A behind-the-scenes clip from the show surfaced online, uncut footage showing what happened after the cameras stopped. It showed Maher offering Fonda a handshake, telling her, "You handled that better than most would." She smiled faintly, replying, "You didn't have to handle me at all." The exchange was awkward but human, a quiet moment that softened both of them. The clip went viral instantly. Suddenly, the internet wasn't sure what to feel. Fans who'd been at each other's throats paused. Some said it showed mutual respect. Others insisted it was all staged. But either way, the tone shifted, from fury to fascination. People started asking bigger questions. Had the argument been genuine? Or was it the smartest publicity stunt of the year? Maher refused to clarify, brushing it off with a shrug in a follow-up interview. "Sometimes reality is messy," he said. "That's why people watch." Fonda, on the other hand, took a different path. She issued a short, carefully worded statement. "Disagreement," it read, "isn't the problem. Pretending disagreement doesn't exist is." It was brief, poetic, and vague enough to calm the noise without admitting defeat. But behind that statement, insiders claimed she was shaken. "She knows this won't just fade," one friend said. Her legacy is being debated by people who weren't even born when she started acting. Still, the episode had an odd side effect. Other entertainers began breaking rank, giving interviews that sounded less rehearsed, more candid. One actor confessed, "We're scared to talk now. If you say the wrong thing, you're either canceled or trending, and neither feels like winning." It was as if the entire industry realized the same thing at once, that the audience wasn't just watching for glamour anymore. They were watching for cracks. Authenticity, even messy authenticity, had become more valuable than polished speeches. And the Maher-Fonda clash was proof of that. On podcasts and radio shows across the country, callers debated it like a national issue. Truck drivers, teachers, retirees, they all had opinions. "She's out of touch," said one caller from Ohio. "No, she's just being polite," said another from Los Angeles. People who had never watched Club Random before suddenly tuned in, not for comedy or interviews, but to witness tension itself. The internet wasn't just reporting on conflict anymore, it was feeding on it. And both Maher and Fonda had become its unwilling suppliers. As days passed, a new rumor began swirling, that the two might actually appear together again, this time for a charity debate about free speech in media. No one knew if it was true, but the idea alone kept headlines alive. Fans imagined what a reunion would look like: Maher's smirk, Fonda's poise. the possibility of unfinished business. And somewhere between outrage and admiration, a strange thing happened. People stopped arguing about who was right. They started arguing about who was real. Days turned into weeks. But the echoes of that single episode refused to fade. The confrontation between Bill Maher and Jane Fonda had taken on a life of its own, mutating into something bigger than politics or television. It had become a symbol of the cultural fault lines splitting Hollywood down the middle. Every magazine cover, podcast, and late-night monologue seemed to circle back to that night. That stare, that pause before Fonda said, "Maybe I should start watching Fox News." It was like watching a spark that refused to die out, kept alive by both fascination and resentment. In Los Angeles, gossip columns buzzed with whispers of closed-door meetings. Fonda's team was supposedly working on a damage control tour, a carefully crafted sequence of interviews that would reframe her image. But some insiders claimed she didn't want to play along. "She's exhausted," one of them said quietly. "She doesn't want to spin it. She wants to be left alone." Still, Hollywood didn't wait. A new narrative had already taken root. Jane Fonda, the veteran activist, the face of old-school idealism, had finally collided with the raw cynicism of modern reality television politics. And Bill Maher had become the unlikely vessel for that collision. Interview 12.5 Maher carried on as if nothing seismic had happened. He opened his next podcast with a sly grin and a casual, "So apparently I'm trending again," drawing laughter from his audience. His tone was light, but beneath it was that same sharpness that made people listen even when they disagreed. "Everyone's acting like I threw a grenade," he said. "I didn't throw anything. I just asked questions." His fans cheered. His critics rolled their eyes. But either way, the numbers spoke for themselves. The episode had broken every viewing record club Random ever had. It was a perfect storm of controversy, ego, and timing. And yet, something deeper was happening behind the scenes. Despite the ratings and fame, Maher reportedly told close friends that the encounter with Fonda had stuck with him. "She looked hurt," he admitted during a private dinner, according to one witness. "Not because of what I said, but because she realized she didn't see it coming." That admission surprised even his team. Maher had built his career on tough debates, but this one had felt different. Maybe because Fonda wasn't just another guest. She was a mirror of the Hollywood he'd been criticizing for years. In challenging her, he was also confronting the system that had shaped both of them. Jane, on the other hand, seemed to withdraw further into quiet reflection. One evening, paparazzi caught her leaving a small cafe in Santa Monica, notebook in hand, looking contemplative. No entourage, no assistants, just her in the ocean air. Rumors swirled that she was writing a statement. Not a press release, but something personal. Maybe an op-ed, maybe a letter, maybe nothing at all. Friends said she'd been journaling every night since the interview, trying to process what had happened. "She feels like she was blindsided," said one of them. But at the same time, she knows she walked right into it. When Fonda finally broke her silence, it wasn't through a press conference or a talk show. It was a short video posted quietly on her social media, just her sitting by a window, sunlight spilling across her face. "I've been doing this a long time," she began, voice steady but soft. "And I've learned that sometimes the loudest moments are the ones that teach you the most." She paused, looking directly at the camera. "I don't regret the conversation. I regret that it stopped being one. There was no defensiveness, no blame." She spoke like someone who had been both bruised and enlightened by the chaos. "We don't have to agree," she said, "but we do have to listen. Because when we stop listening, we stop being curious. And when we stop being curious, we stop growing." The video was only 3 minutes long, but it hit harder than any headline. Within hours, it went viral again. Not for outrage this time, but for sincerity. Even Maher's fans called it graceful. When Maher saw the clip, he responded during his next show. "That's the Jane Fonda I grew up respecting," he said. "If we had more conversations like that, we might actually fix something." The crowd applauded, not because it was funny, but because it was rare. Two people from opposite sides of a cultural war acknowledging each other without malice. For a brief moment, the internet calmed down. Hashtags shifted from insults to reflection. Maybe We Can Listen started trending, fueled by users who were tired of outrage fatigue. But Hollywood doesn't stay calm for long. While fans celebrated this moment of reconciliation, gossip outlets began spinning new angles. Rumors of Maher and Fonda reuniting for a live panel. Whispers about a possible documentary on the day Hollywood argued with itself. Nothing was confirmed, but the speculation kept both names in the headlines. And yet, beneath all that noise, something had genuinely changed. Producers across the industry began rethinking how they handled on-air debates. Talk shows that once filtered every question started embracing unpredictability. "People want real again," said one executive. "They don't want scripts. They want to see truth, even if it's uncomfortable." Still, not everyone saw it as a positive turn. Critics accused Maher of turning discourse into theater, calling it manufactured authenticity. Others argued Fonda's grace was a calculated redemption arc. But the public didn't seem to care. They were hooked, not on who was right, but on the drama of watching two icons expose each other's blind spots. And somewhere inside that chaos, a strange honesty emerged. The kind that made people realize the divide wasn't just political, it was personal. In the end, neither Maher nor Fonda issued apologies. There were no winners, no final verdicts, just two voices, two perspectives, colliding under hot lights, forcing millions to look inward. Months later, when asked about the moment, Maher simply said, "It wasn't about her. It was about us." And Fonda, when approached at an event, smiled faintly and said, "Maybe it was exactly what we needed." And that's how an unexpected conversation became one of Hollywood's most unforgettable confrontations. Not because of who shouted loudest, but because, for once, the mask slipped. The applause faded. The cameras shut off. But the echo of that clash still lingered. In every debate, every interview, every quiet realization that truth doesn't always come gift-wrapped in politeness. Sometimes it comes as a jolt, uncomfortable, unscripted, and utterly human. And that brings us to the question everyone's still asking. Did Bill Maher really expose the truth? Or did Hollywood just see its own reflection for the first time in years? Was this a clash of egos or a much-needed reminder that not every conversation has to end in applause? Whatever side you're on, one thing's clear. This wasn't just a talk show moment. It was a cultural spark that's still burning long after the cameras stopped rolling. Fans are still divided. Insiders are still whispering. And both Maher and Fonda have quietly changed the way everyone looks at celebrity conversations. But now, it's your turn to weigh in. Do you think Maher went too far? Or was he just saying what others were too afraid to admit? Did Fonda handle it with grace? Or did she fold under pressure? Tell us what you think in the comments, because your opinion is part of the story too. If you enjoyed diving into this wild Hollywood face-off, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss the next explosive moment. Turn on the notification bell so you're the first to catch every twist, every shock, every behind-the-scenes whisper that keeps the entertainment world spinning. This is more than just celebrity drama. It's the sound of two worlds colliding. And somewhere between Maher's sharp honesty and Fonda's quiet resilience lies a truth we're all still trying to figure out. Stay tuned. Because if this was the first round, you can bet Hollywood's far from done talking.